Welcome to Compliance Uncomplicated, an interview series dedicated to simplifying the unnecessarily complex world of risk and compliance. Hosted by Drata experts, each episode will tell a new story about high-growth startups and other brands that are building compliance pathways towards a culture of security. Every business, industry, and team has unique challenges when it comes to building trust. And for many startups, compliance is one of the first stepping stones towards that pathway. In each episode, we'll hear from founders, visionaries, and those tasked with building a foundation of trust for their brand. It's time to unravel the jargon and abbreviations and uncomplicate compliance.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Compliance Uncomplicated. I am one of your revolving hosts, Elliot Volkman, the Director of Creative Services here at Drata. And alongside me, I have Derek over at Labelbox, who actually I'm going to hand that off to you to give a proper introduction so I don't just kind of read off your resume, but we will quickly dig into your background here in just a moment.
Yeah, I am Derek Espiritu from Labelbox. My official title is Senior Information Security Risk and Compliance Analyst. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I really like it because I do cover quite a bit at Labelbox, but just anything regarding information security. That's what I like to put myself as.
Candidly, that's why I made you introduce yourself. I was absolutely going to ruin your title, so I figure, hey, I'll just kind of hand that off to you. You know what
even
you
I will, but it's all right. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect. So what does that look like over at your org? What does Labelbox do? And then how does your role impact what you do on a day-to-day?
So we are the annotation or data labeling tool, that platform that will be able to help train and iterate those models. So anybody that's looking to improve computer vision or large language models or just generative AI, we're able to do those annotations and make it so much easier for those language learning or those data scientists, to make it easier for them to be able to identify how can they actually build this model faster and iterate and make sure it's not, instead of it being a monthly or this forever long process, into maybe even like weekly iterations of making sure that these models are as efficient as possible.
Very interesting. So from a security perspective, you are handling a significant amount of pretty important information for these companies.
Yes, we are. The best part about Labelbox is that we're set up in a way that we're just holding the annotation data. So basically the locations of, okay, this is an annotation of a pool. You know that it's a pool and this is the location of that annotation. And then we allow the customers to hold all their confidential personal data on their end or their cloud service provider. That way we're not holding anything that's really substantial, but it's kind of the lock and key situation where you would need both of those, the annotation, location, and the image, to actually make some sense out of it. And by keeping them separated, we're able to keep it protected and more safe and secure.
Very cool. It almost sounds like you're kind of aligning with that zero knowledge architecture system where the most
as best as we can when it comes to it.
Very cool. So let's kind of dig into your background a little bit. Obviously, you did not wake up, 10 years ago and kind of end up in Labelbox. But I know you had worked over at Adobe and some other pretty big organizations, kind of getting through your security chops. What led you to where you are today? What did those past roles look like? How did it evolve into being at a very cutting edge organization?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of, I guess, my story with cybersecurity started back in college, but briefly going over my LinkedIn resume, it started out as a system administrator for my college, then went and was a support engineer at Symantec, then did consulting at Inglepoint, then went to Adobe as an information security analyst and ended up at Labelbox. But I really because I love sharing about my story about how I got into cybersecurity, because I don't feel like I'm the smartest person around. I've been around people that are just really, really, just smart, overall smart. And back in college, I was actually trying to be a advertising major and I didn't get into that major. So I called up my cousin who I really look up to and I said, I don't know, I don't have any direction. What do you suggest? And he told me, technology is the boom of the world right now, Derek. Have you looked into information technology? I said, no, what's that? So I was very unfamiliar because I was still I write all my passwords, leave them on a sticky note and put them on my computer type of person. And once I got into it, I just loved the environment and learning about it. My passion behind it was I was able to help my grandma secure her computer. She was just always asking me questions, and my mom would ask me questions about how to set up these computers, and it was really fun for me to just start researching it, and that led me to even graduating in cybersecurity. That's like the emphasis that I chose because I started becoming very passionate about it. And at my roles, when it comes to compliance, I started with this system administration for the computer science department. So they were, it was they were really smart programmers, right? So I was making sure that the whole system was being secure. I helped set up the SIM, the IDS, all those things. And then it switched after college. I was the support engineer and helping with data loss prevention. So I thought I didn't really understand data classification until I got into that role and understanding that customers really like their data. And there's a lot of data in the world. I always had wanted to go to Adobe. It's one of the big companies around where I live. And I wasn't ready yet. I had applied a couple of times before then. So I applied to Anglepoint, and that got me into compliance because sad to say I was a cybersecurity major, but I had no idea what SOC 2 was. I thought it was just, you have two SOCs. I didn't know. It was just a fun time. And when I started getting into those projects there, I had so much fun being able to interact with the customers and being the head for like the SOC 2 or ISO implementation. Then Adobe was awesome. I loved Adobe. The people there are fantastic. I learned so much about vendor onboarding and security reviews. It was just amazing. And now that I'm at Labelbox, I've been here for about a year now. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I really do love this program, and I love everything about the security here.
That is amazing. I want to make two comments on your background here, only because you might be one of the most optimistic people that I've worked with in this space based on that conversation. So I feel like anyone that has been in any kind of tech adjacent space, you become like the family's de facto IT person. And you seem to pick it up in stride, and to the point where maybe it even accelerated you more into this space. So I just absolutely love that. That's an amazing kind of piece of information that
my cousin and I are leading the charge on it. So I try to put a lot on him as much as I can, because I said, you did it first. That way we can let him do it.
Love it. Yeah, and I'm sure you're helping them prevent reusing 100 different passwords and all that good stuff too. Yep, there it is.
Oh yeah, the password manager, I've been able to suggest to my mom. I said, this other one got breached. You should use this one. Or my dad, I'm like, stop writing these down. I don't want these on here. He doesn't. He's really good about it now. He's great with his password management.
Love it. Yeah, I feel that pain. I have like a family account, and I forced my entire siblings and all of them onto the same account. Just it was like, y'all just put your passwords in there. You're good. Don't worry about the rest. I'll cover you the rest. That other piece I think is really interesting that you called out was you had, I don't know if the specific adjective was like excitement or fun, but you said you really enjoyed the SOC 2 process, which is not something you'd typically, maybe hear. That GRC is maybe historically pretty boring. It's documentation. It doesn't have to be. I know internally we have like this secret mission of trying to make compliance cool, but I think that's shooting for Mars instead of Moon. But that's neither here or there. I'd love to know your perspective on what really, I guess, drew that out. What was exciting about it.
Okay, for me, I'm a big, I guess, extrovert, and I love people, and I like building trust with people more, just more like building a relationship.
Yeah.
And the SOC 2, in a very, I guess, strange way, is building a relationship with security and building that trust, because it's just this list of things to really create a good, secure environment for a company. And it's a simple path to actually start implementing those. And it starts from, top down when it comes to the executive trying to push the security vision. But when I first started as a consultant and understanding what SOC 2 really did mean, I'm helping secure these environments and building these relationships so that when somebody else looks at the SOC report or looks at these controls, they know, okay, they can be trusted because they have implemented this. And it's basically putting the best foot forward when it comes to security with presenting it to different companies that want to onboard you as a vendor.
Yeah, I absolutely love that perspective. I think, on paper, GRC, governance, compliance, those are associated with usually rules and regulations that organizations are compelled to do. I think there's that line of like comply or die or whatever kind of the dramatic phrasing is, but it shouldn't have to be like that. Maybe 20 something years ago, sure. But I love your perspective where you're essentially building trust through this and you're kind of building that culture of cybersecurity through compliance. I mean, that is the antithesis of this entire series that our producer Alexis, hiding behind the scenes, has built for us, because we're just trying to have conversations with people exactly like you who feel that there is something more to it. It's a really good guiding stone. So I just want to point that out in particular and just say I really appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I just find it fun, but that's me. I'm a little bit strange about it, but I like it.
Love it. Cool. So I do want to navigate a little bit more and learn more about Labelbox and specifically dig into a very hot topic of ours, which is AI. So not just AI in the sense of maybe what organizations would see in technology products in the past, where some could just be if statements, some are using data models, but you all are really helping organizations embrace the more cutting edge stuff. So everything leading up to like generative AI. But I know we kind of briefly touched on what Labelbox does, but in the aspect of AI and generative AI, maybe you can walk us through maybe like a few use cases, not having to call out any customers or anything like that, but maybe just how specifically that can be applied and beneficial and who that's beneficial to.
So from my perspective of it, and this is just a very biased opinion about it. If you're not using AI, you're kind of falling behind. And ChatGPT was just one of many that have been leading up to this situation where AI has been just exploding and everybody wants to be fast, iterative. They want to be having a part of this process. With generative AI, like I think a good example is just these art, right? It's just creating this point where we can use these models to create that. Labelbox is just making it a faster process to iterate those ways. So we have the three main products that we have. It's Annotate, Catalog, and Model. And other ones that are coming along, but Annotate is the way to label the actual images, the text, the audio, to do the large language models, as well as start with generative AI. And I'm hoping that some generative AI will help with compliance. I don't know what possible use case it could be, but I'm trying to brainstorm myself and be like, already it's helping create policies, right? You could say, I would like to have like an audit log policy, right? or something else like that. And it can help implement a lot quicker. And I think it's really cool that Labelbox is a part of creating that system. As well as one of my favorite use cases, actually, I'm going to name them anyway because they're kind of near and dear to my heart, is Ancestry. And they're a really close company here where I live. And they were trying to find efficient ways to decode census data in their language models. So we were able to get them from, I believe it was like over a month's worth of, okay, we've trained this model, how's it doing? Let's reiterate and relabel or do what we can. And we cut them down to a week's time.
Wow.
And that just made it more efficient to look up family history, which I find is really fun, just to look up your own family. But if it's helping the world in their genealogy progress, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. The fact that you're able to cut it down from a month to a week is a significant level of
Yeah.
progress,
Not
especially if
not
you're
totally quotable, but I know for sure that it was about a week.
either way, chopping out that amount of time or a rough estimate of it, that is a significant impact, especially if like consumers are using it and, you
Yes.
know, like our parents are probably the ones using it. They're not necessarily the ones to be the most patient to sit and want to wait for 30 days when they could instead get information in a
Exactly.
week or something
There's a
like
lot
that.
more things to do. We're a very fast technology environment, and the quicker it is like to push out product, to push out these models, it's getting there. But
Hmm.
my hope is that we're securely coding these models, right? We're doing everything in our power to actually get that, and Labelbox is a part of it. Is that we're keeping all the data safe and making sure that it's getting to the right places to be.
Absolutely. So you sort of already touched on this a little bit, and it doesn't have to be totally applicable towards compliance and how AI can apply to there. Although I think we've seen a few use cases where some organizations have been able to try to speed up some of the security reviews with some AI related things. I've actually played with ChatGPT myself. It's like, hey, let me just put in like some information, see if it'll give me the policy I need for SOC 2. It was terrible, by the way. Also, it still calls SOC 2 certification, and Troy Fine on our team will have a fit if we ever use that. But it is a good guiding stone. Anyways,
Mhm.
that all to say, I'm just curious from your perspective as someone who's kind of split between living and breathing it within an organization and having that security mindset. How do you feel that AI will continue to be leveraged and maybe impact companies both on the positive and maybe on the less positive side?
I think it's going to make security work in general for an information security analyst a lot easier. It's just
Mm,
another tool in the belt to be able to review a lot of information and data points quickly. So the more process that we have with that and to iterate, to continue to build on top of it and to make it quicker, the
mm,
more that it'll be helpful for like the blue team to say engineers and try to keep ahead of the red team or those hackers that are coming along. But that's what I'm hoping for with AI. I don't know there's so many models and there's so many use cases with AI that it could be used for both sides. On the other side of the coin is that I'm just hoping people don't become lazy, right? It's just okay. I don't want to be doing these checks. I can create this. I know we're all about automation, but there's also got to be that human element of seeing these security incidents, seeing these security processes go through to make sure and not find any defects with it. And that's going to come along with time, though. I think we're in a great situation right now where security and AI can be very complementary of one another.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we have like that same argument for how automation takes its role in what we do over here at Drata, where it should be treated as a force multiplier. It should help speed things up, accelerate the company. It shouldn't be treated as something that replaces people. It just removes a lot of the ambiguity of it,
Exactly.
as long as there's you know no bumps in the road, which always can happen with technology. Which is why humans have such a critical role in verification of the information. And yeah, I think you were spot on with hopefully organizations not getting lazy with how this impacts them.
Yeah, I was at the RSA conference just a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about AI becoming sentient or what, and then
Yeah.
somebody asked the question, "Are you worried about that?" And it was almost kind of a roll their eyes, but a serious question
Right.
too. And they said no, because we are the ones controlling it. We're the
Hmm.
ones creating this, and it's not sentient yet. There's no soul that comes along with
Right.
AI, but it's going to be a good force for humanity, whatever we use it for. So thankfully, we're in a good place, and I trust our leaders of technology right now in the AI space to make sure they're accountable for what they are doing with
Hmm.
it. But it keeps coming back to compliance and security to make sure that it is a very secure environment that it's being done in.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think historically, if the way we look at how technology typically goes, anyways, it's almost like they have to self-govern because governance follows quite a bit later, unless something absolutely drastic or impactful occurs, and then there's just that kind of push point where they have to. So it is obviously in everyone's best interest for self-regulation to help secure data and information and not
Yes.
maybe create a Skynet scenario.
Yep. Yeah, we just gotta be careful. That's about it, right? We can and do our very best so far. I think we're doing a great job
Yeah,
as of
spot on.
right
So I know we kind of jokingly touched on this, but I'm going to just jump into it a little bit further. So obviously, Skynet not on the table for you is that probability, but I think you already did hint on it, where it is possible where we could be over reliant on technology, where we have like the Wall-E scenario, which is I think
now.
maybe it's been so
Yeah.
long since I've seen that. Maybe I got the plot wrong, but I feel like AI was where everyone got super lazy, and that's why humanity became the way it was. Anyways, between the two very drastic potentials, where do you think is the most likely scenario, or just they're both so far fetched that you know something in between?
Let's see, how reliant am I on my smartphone? I'll tell you, I got the texting thumb. I don't know if
Mm,
if you ever gotten that, but my thumb is
no.
starting to hurt, right? It's just because I text in a weird way, so I can only swipe with my forefinger right now. The other thing is that my daughter, she's 2.5 years old,
Mm,
and she's very good with the phone right now. She knows when we're calling the grandparents, and she'll
mm,
always ask to push a button at the end of it, and like, she could swipe through. She knows
yeah,
where her apps are. And for me, I'm just, okay, is this too much screen time, or is this relying too much on technology?
yeah.
So in that scenario, it could be to the point where it's just like there's too much technology, but as long as they as long as they're using it for good and they understand that there should be some boundaries with it when it comes
Mm.
to technology use, then I'm all for that. I think we're going to end up in the Wally situation if we ever do come to that situation where it's just a lot of reliance on technology, which is it it's it's a situation, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But thankfully, when it comes to my daughter, I'm just like, okay, we can probably turn off the TV for now. That's enough screen time for today.
Yeah, I feel that. I've got a baby on the way in like 2.5, 3 months,
Oh,
and the way that my
congrats.
entire thank you. I've got so much technology around this house. Instead of like baby proofing, I need to like technology proof it maybe a little bit, because I do feel like that is definitely my future.
I know for a fact, even though I'm in cybersecurity, I'm in
Yeah.
technology, that my daughter's going to be teaching me about something new with it. I just it's fun to keep up, and I try to as much as I can. But I know
Yeah.
that she's going to be born with this, and she's been born with it, and she's been using it a lot more than me. So we'll see how she's going to be teaching me in the future.
Yeah, I mean that's what we should hope for, right? We get to be that boring old people hanging out, telling people to get off our virtual lawns, and the kids teaching us how to do everything else. So let's focus, I guess, a little bit more back to that world of compliance. I think what we were really kind of digging into is the not check the box versus almost continuous compliance, and then even more so how you're as an organization able to keep up with these changes pretty they don't happen like left and right, but I am curious to know, how do you keep abreast of that kind of information? Obviously if it's plugged into a platform, it's updated, cool, but
Mhm.
if new governance and new rules and regulations come down, typically where do you kind of get that information?
As much as I can from the articles that are coming in, because you can only get so much, but just making sure that you're doing your research behind it, and that's just coming through quarterly reviews with, hey, where are we at as a compliance posture? And it's just doing an internal audit. So it's actually really helpful for me when we're actually undergoing the ISO audit right now and the SOC
Hmm.
2 audit at kind of at the same time in sync. So it's a good that's there's no time then the present to reflect on how are we actually doing, because we're actually about to get audited for it. But that's just one scenario where it's, hey, we're just going to be checking it and doing our part as a company to really build this compliance program.
Yeah, totally. And unfortunately, now I have to unpack even more questions for you for that response. But obviously, ISO 27001,
Yeah.
whatever, 2022 has come out and is now sort of in effect. But, did that change anything for y'all? Obviously, you're in the middle of it, so it doesn't put you in that position where you're supposed to apply everything. But I'm curious if you made any adjustments since there were some new rules and information that kind of came out around that.
There's a few adjustments, but this is the first time we're getting ISO
Hmm.
audited in general. So we didn't really go for the 2013 version. We immediately switched to the 2022 version.
Very cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, and we're one of the first ones to get audited with it too, because we're excited to do it. And there was a couple of different changes and adjustments to it, but they were pretty seamless, honestly, because thankfully most, if not all, of the controls that we had to switch over, we were already doing, which just goes to show that our company is like Labelbox, the devs and the engineers, they're doing their part to do secure coding and secure development.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean that's fantastic. Obviously, you're kind of future proofing it a bit too, so you don't have
As
to.
much as I can, as much as we can, honestly, but we'll see.
Cool. So you also mentioned you were doing SOC 2 almost as simultaneously, but what does that look like to, I guess, juggle two at the same time? For a lot of organizations, one alone is pretty hefty, but do you feel that's a challenge? What does that look like for y'all?
Because there's so much crossover, it's not it, I would say if you're going to do it, you can do it.
Mhm.
And for my team, we keep a very tedious calendar of events of this is what we need to do in this quarter for ISO.
Mhm.
This is what we need to do in this quarter for SOC. And if we follow those, we keep up with it and it's not overwhelming where we all wait till the last minute to submit a bunch of evidence at the last second. It's very okay. We do it this at this time, so we can keep track.
Very cool. I don't want to like draw out a sales pitch, but the fact that obviously you're able to put the same controls from SOC to and that overlap with ISO in there probably makes things a little bit easier too.
Yeah, here's my sales pitch. Ready? So for Drata. So I've really appreciated using the Drata platform. When I was a consultant for back I don't know how many years ago, about maybe 3 years ago, we were doing the manual screenshot review
Yeah.
and keeping those all in Google folders or Windows folders. And I had to be the one, hey, where is this certain one? And then I have to
Yeah.
test for effectiveness. What does that mean to be effective? And I actually didn't know about a compliance platform where you can just submit
Hmm.
everything until I came to Labelbox and I come in there and they're like, hey, we have this thing called Drata. I said, what is this? where are, where do I have to like submit the screenshots? They're like, oh, you just do it once. It's just it's all in one place. It was just going into it was like the Wizard of Oz moment where I
Hmm.
guess getting into the Emerald City, I'm just whoa, this is so
Right.
different, but I love it.
Oh man, I absolutely love that. But I will not make this about us because this is very much a conversation about you. That all said, so I am curious. Obviously, you've run through SOC 2 at past organizations. You came
Mhm.
into an org that had Drata kind of sort of geared up to be put in place. But I'd love to know like the motivating factor for why they decide to pursue not just one but two frameworks at the same time.
So AI is the hot topic right now, right?
Of course.
And we want to be, if people are looking at us as a potential option to make their models faster and to make these AI come out, they want to have the most secure ones because
Mhm.
sad to say, breaches happen and they're happening all over the place. And as much as AI is innovating, so are the red teams and the black hats, right? They want to make sure that there's so much data and a good a good point for that is ChatGPT, one of the biggest large learning models of all time, trillions of data points, trillions of things that could be stolen. So for us and our end, we're thinking ahead and saying like, why wouldn't you pick a vendor that
Mhm.
has SOC 2 or that has ISO that has this compliance program So that's one of our motivating factors behind it, and just to make sure that we're also evolving with the security environment. We're doing our part as a security program.
Yeah, I think those learning lessons from peers who, well, not peers, but obviously in your space, the targets are getting larger and larger on organizations'
Hmm.
back, because of how critical that information is. And if you're consuming a lot of information, that makes sense. So, I mean, to sum it up, it sounds essentially like a trust factor. These, you know, outputs, and the information that you're collecting, just helps kind of reassure. I don't want to call it a safety blanket. That's terrible language. But it does reassure your customers and potential future customers that you all are doing things the right way, and you have third parties that help validate that information.
Hmm. And it's to the point where it's finally switched from becoming your data is finally your data, right? And not even just on a consumer side.
Hmm.
That point, we're like, I just want to make sure that my data is protected. So our privacy program is doing just great, taking great strides with that as well.
Love it. So one question that I do love to ask, and obviously, the compliance aspect of this is very beneficial and it helps kind of build that trust. But maybe from your perspective in general, but what are some ways that your organization is kind of treating security as a critical piece, as like a security first mindset? So going out of the way before your customers are asking for like SOC 2 report and all that, those are definitely elements of it that I can see first very clearly. But yeah, I was just curious, what all do you all build into the culture of the company that aligns with kind of what you do?
So we always start with security awareness training, right? It's got to be the very simple. Make sure you lock your screens. Make sure that when you're traveling, you keep your laptop safe. So that physical security aspect of it, because
Mm,
building a security culture is pretty difficult. And for us, it's an even more different use case. We're a fully remote company. So
mhm.
we're even more, we got to make sure that people are securing their stuff. So that's the first part of it, just security awareness, and then pushing what our leadership has in mind for security, and that's making sure that we're the most secure platform that can be around, and that goes and trickles down to the devs, that goes and trickles down to marketing, just of how we keep data safe. Thankfully, for me and my end, we created this thing called the security documentation package, and it's just
Mhm.
everything security related we put into one thing, and we give it to customers after we have them sign an NDA so that they can know that, okay, like, yes, you could do your research about the security that we do have at Labelbox,
Mhm.
but here's everything that we do. So that way it's all in one spot for you to review and to honestly, hopefully build trust as quickly as we can.
I love it. Yeah, that transparency factor is
Mhm.
definitely a critical piece. It's hard to, get a lot of organizations to be on board with that because, you're basically showing the skeletons that could be even in the closet. And yeah, I'm sure that can be a little nerve-wracking, but I'm sure once those customers see how open you are with the information, that in itself is a pretty big trust factor.
Mhm.
Cool. So I do have one last final question. Well, sorry, I've got probably two. But
Okay.
for organizations who are maybe starting their compliance journey, who have never done it before, from your perspective, obviously, have been through this a few different times. Do you have any kind of generalized advice that you can provide them that would help point them in the right direction? And do not say go a drought or anything to that extent. More tangible of like, how do you start your compliance journey off on the right foot?
The first thing is researching what's applicable in the
Mm,
marketplace right now. So SOC 2 and ISO, I think, are the gold standard for frameworks that you should be implementing almost immediately, almost at startup. I'll actually say
mm,
that one of the reasons I joined Labelbox, because I wasn't even looking to switch careers at the time. I was very comfortable with where I was at. I got, they reached out to me, and when I saw the security program at Labelbox, I was
mm,
really shocked because startups don't usually do this. They don't have a security page. They don't have a privacy
mhm.
statement. They don't have all this documentation. and policies already in place. And it intrigued me because security was first in their mind. And I have the best team. I'm going to shout them out. Natana and Madeline are just amazing when it comes to compliance, to privacy, and just overall data protection. They're the reasons that I switched from where I was to where I am now, and I'm incredibly happy with our security program. The next part is just always researching and adapting, and not being afraid to implement and start putting in those policies in place as quickly as you can. Even if it's a very basic policy, have something, because especially if you're touching production data or personal identifiable information, that PII, it's so crucial to have something in place to show customers that we are willing to put in these protections. So the best time to start is now. If you don't have anything, start doing the research, start putting the effort as a company to be in line with these frameworks, because if you're not, I don't think you'd be a viable choice, but it's okay, and you can start anytime you want.
All right. Yeah, that certainly makes sense to me. So obviously each framework has its own kind of pros and cons. I think in the US it's a little bit of a split between, do I go with SOC 2 or do I go with ISO? Obviously you're going for both at the same time, which makes it
Yeah.
just a few things. Obviously, if you're more like UK, EMEA region, international, ISO is a little more applicable. Maybe SOC 2 is not as relevant there, but yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me. And I have one final question, but I'm going to make you put on your organizational sales hat. Where can people learn more about Labelbox and what you do?
Labelbox.com is a great place to start. It goes over all of our products. We have some really cool blog posts about how to effectively create these models or create this generative AI, and how to interact with all of these the new and upcoming products that are coming out. They're coming out every single week. There's something else. And lastly, email me. I'm totally happy to answer any questions about security or Labelbox in general. It's Derek@labelbox.com. I might not be the best person to answer, but I love to interact with customers or people that are just looking into AI in general. It's a fascinating space to be in.
Well, there you have it. And I think for our listeners, seriously, take Derek up on this. Having that opportunity to tap into someone who's been through these things before is a critical asset, and it is hard to find people to volunteer their time for that. So thank you on behalf of our listeners and watchers and viewers. We really appreciate that. And just to kind of wrap things up, but thank you so much for your perspective, chatting through AI, helping us understand what brought you to Labelbox and some of that journey. We really appreciate it, and thank you for kind of sharing that story with us.
Thanks so much for bringing me on too. I was super excited when I got that email to participate in this. So really have had an awesome time on this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And, again, we just really appreciate it. And folks, definitely check out Labelbox and reach out to Derek if you have questions about security and AI.
Thank you for listening to Compliance Uncomplicated, a Drata podcast. To learn more about the series, go to drata.com/uncomplicated. Discuss this episode on our community secured at community.drata.com, or subscribe to our newsletter, Trusted, to stay up to date on the latest episodes.